What's up, guys? It is Dr. Seth, and we are back with another round answering your questions from my Instagram AMA. And we are back upstairs in the office because it is the end of meet prep, and I am too lazy to carry all of the cameras and lights downstairs. So let's get into it with question number one. Any thoughts on name redacted saying that the way that you box squat is goofy? And I'm a goofy little guy. I'm okay being goofy, and I'm okay box squatting goofy because the way that I box squat became the way that I box squat, not because of me just trying to be contrarian, anti West Side, yada yada yada. The way that I box squat came to be because I box squatted the West Side way for years and years and years and years. And yes, it did build like a very good raw squat. I squatted 821 at 275 in reps, box squatting that way, squatting sat back, squatting out wide, but I hit a very hard wall shortly after, and that's what I started to think, like, maybe I should look at the way that other raw powerlifting coaches coach the squat. Maybe I should look at getting more quads into my squat and getting more quads into my box squat. And since doing that, I've put over 100 pounds on my wrap squat and like 150 pounds on my sleeve squat by getting better quads and by box squatting with more quads. And those coaches that will say that the way that I box squat is wrong will like make the argument that the box squat isn't for technical purposes and yada yada yada, and it's just a good posterior chain builder, and box squatting sat back is going to be way better builder for a deadlift. But since I stopped box squatting like that, my deadlift has freaking blown up as well. So I don't think that I'm losing anything by the way that I box squat. I definitely do think that I am gaining a lot by the way that I box squat. And if I do find the need that I need more hips or I need more whatever, I might start sitting back again, but for now, I can build my hips with other means. I can get some wide stimulus with sumo deadlifts, so I don't think that I'm losing anything box squatting the way that I'm doing it. My squat's getting better, my client squats are getting better, so I'm totally fine doing it the way that I'm doing it, and I'm just going to stay in my lane because it's working for me, and I really don't care about arguing with people on the internet. And for question number two, are we ever going to see 242 Seth again? And I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately. I am in the second half of my powerlifting career. I'm comfortable saying that I am past the point of where I'm probably halfway done. Like, I'm 12 years into this. I do see myself competing for a lot longer, but I don't see myself competing to infinity. So I'm kind of starting to think about, like, what are the things that I want to accomplish before my powerlifting career is done. And one of those things that I want to accomplish before my powerlifting career is done is something that I tried once before and failed at, and that is competing as a 220. And I don't know why I want to do this. I don't know why. Like, it's this thing in my head that have I just want to have the experience of being a 220 just because I got way too fat at the early stage of my powerlifting career and I'd never competed as a skinny little boy, so I want to compete as a skinny little boy. So priority number one after this meet is just going to be going on a nice long cut, get light enough to compete at 220, and that is also going to serve as a good point to rebuild with a better body composition to attack the more real goals that I want to accomplish before all is said and done. And one of those real goals is to have the biggest Canadian all-time total at 242. I'm only 22 pounds away from that right now. My last 242 meet was 2028 at 242, and I think that if I go down, build up better, I should be able to smash that shit. So you are going to see a 242 Seth sometime in the near future. And for question number three, your most important tips when competing in a competitive meet. Now, this is something that I have screwed up pretty much every single time that I went into a big meet because I went into a big meet thinking I need to do something insane. I need to show everyone how strong I am and I need to win this meet. And obviously, if we are going into a meet, the goal needs to be to do as well as we can. But the reason I screwed this up is I went about that goal the wrong way, and my history at big meets usually looks like opening way too freaking heavy, then getting fucked up and having to take stupid small jumps in my seconds or thirds, or like making up for a missed opener, or just something screwed up happening because I opened too heavy and couldn't adapt to the platform. So I think my number one tip for competing in a competitive meet and competing in a meet where your goal is to win is that you don't win a meet on your opener. You win a meet by picking an opener that will set you up to win your meet on your third. And I think the biggest tip needs to be to go in, open at an attempt that will set you up to have a good third, and open at an attempt that will set you up to be able to win on your thirds. Because if you open too heavy and you can't climb, or if you open too heavy and you miss your opener, or if you open too heavy and just something goes sideways and you can't recover on your second and third, you're kind of screwed for the rest of the day. And I see that happen all too often at big meets. And like, this was really common at the Ghost Clashes. The guys were freaking going for it on their openers, and they ended up not doing well in their opener. They ended up not doing well in their second and third. And a lot of guys that shouldn't have bombed ended up bombing just because they opened too heavy. And moving forward, like, this next meet, it isn't like a big meet, but it's big enough. I'm traveling for it, and my whole mindset is to just set myself up to have the best day possible. Because if I want a shot at best lifter, I need to have my best day possible. And if I want to have my best day possible, it's going to start from a reasonable opener that is going to allow me to climb. And for question number 4, how do you deal mentally with loading heavy lifts after a major injury like the pec tear? And this is not my first rodeo with a major injury. I grew up racing motocross, so I had a lot of shit growing up that I had to deal with, and I had to overcome. And then I've had a couple big ones in powerlifting. Like, I blew my quad off, I blew my adductor magnus off on the right side, I blew all of my anterior adductors off on the left side, and then I did most recently my pec. And what I've learned from this is that it's always going to be a little bit fucked up coming back. Like, you're always going to be in your head until you're not. And you just need to be okay with kind of like riding that edge until one day you trust it again. And the only way you're going to be able to trust it again is by challenging it in an intelligent manner. And I'm never one to say, like, take a risk, do something that you think is going to blow it off. But there are going to be times where your brain's like, I think it's going to blow off again, but like, you know that it's safe. And like, if you know that it's safe, but you're a little bit nervous, you probably should kind of creep towards that nervousness just so you can show yourself that it is going to work again. And I think back to my quad, because that is the first big one that I had to come back from in powerlifting. And it is the one that got me to go back to school. And it's the one that got me to figure all this shit out, because I was way too afraid of it for way too long. And what probably could have been, you know, a 6 months recovery, a 9-year recovery, turned into a 2-year recovery just because I was pussyfooting around it and I wasn't using it, I wasn't pushing it, because I thought that it needed to feel good before I could do stuff with it. And because I thought that it needed to feel good before I could do stuff with it, I never did enough to actually give it a stimulus that would allow it to get better. And when I finally started using it again, it still didn't feel right for a very long time, but I distinctively remember the day that it did feel better, and the day that it finally stopped bothering me, like the day that my knee went from being sketchy to not sketchy, was at Elite FTS. I was squatting in multiply gear suit bottoms, and I was kind of like on the fence of like whether or not I could trust the knee, because it was my first time back in multiply since, well, not my first time back in multiply, but my first time back in the squat suit. I'd trained in briefs prior to that, but it was my first time back in squat suit bottoms. I was still like, I don't know if I could trust this thing. And that day ended up working up and ended up feeling okay. And I was still like, I don't know if I can trust it, but I knew I could trust it. Like, my brain was like, I'm afraid, but like, I knew I could trust it. And I was afraid of it until I put 1014 on the bar that day. I squatted at 1014. I mean, I cut it a little bit high. It wasn't a pretty squat, but like, handling 1014 and realizing like, I handled 1014, my knee didn't explode. My knee hasn't felt sketchy since that day. And with every other injury I've had, with my right adductor magnus, with my left anterior adductors, there was just a day where I squatted and I knew I could trust it. And since then, it hasn't been in my head. And that day hasn't happened yet with the pec, but I know that I keep doing what I'm doing. That day will come and I'll be able to start trusting it again. So it really is just a matter of being cautious, not over pushing it, but knowing that you have to push it a little bit to allow yourself to build that trust, and eventually you are going to be able to trust the thing again. And for the last question of the day, tips for mental clarity and intensity during heavy lifts. And for me, this comes from 2 places. The first is that I approach the bar from a place of positivity. I used to be the guy that would try to get as angry as he could at the bar because he thought he needed to let out all of his rage and hatred and blah, 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 and like think about all of the things that happened to me in my life. And you know what? That does kind of work, because you can come to the bar feeling very powerful, but it's also very unreliable, and it makes lifting really not all that much fun. And if I didn't change how I approach the bar, I probably still wouldn't be powerlifting because I would have just started hating the sport because I don't like being angry. And I think like people still assume that I'm an angry lifter because I do make noise, I do get hyped up, but it's all coming from a place of being freaking excited to lift the weight. And I'm just like, I'm having fun. I'm in the moment. I'm in the flow. I'm just feeling it. And that expresses itself. It is aggressive, but it's not angry. And it really just comes from, like I said, being excited to lift the weight and being excited to show how well my training has worked and just being grateful to get to do the thing that I freaking love to do. And part of then being able to channel that and part of being able to bring that out comes from visualization. So I know what my lift is going to be. Like, I know what lift I'm doing on a day, and I will be thinking about that lift from the moment I decide that is the lift I'm hitting that day. Like, if I know that I have a squat with chains coming up, I'm going to be visualizing how that squat with chains is going to feel. I'm going to be visualizing every single moment from the moment I'm like pre-rolling my wraps. I'm visualizing the pre-roll. I'm visualizing how that feels. I'm visualizing tying the wrap. I'm visualizing putting the chalk on my hands and grabbing the bar. I'm visualizing setting myself under the bar. I'm visualizing setting my brace. I'm visualizing feeling everything getting tight under that pick. I'm visualizing the pick. I'm just playing the whole setup and then the whole squat over and over and over in my head so that the time that it comes to actually do it, it's just there and I can just get excited to finally get to do it and finally get to make it feel like I know how it's going to feel. And just getting good at visualizing, getting good at practicing the lift before it happens is going to make the lift more reliable and it's going to make the mental clarity more reliable. And then by the time I get to the bar, it's happened 1,000 times in my head. I don't have to think about it, it just happens. So it comes for me, again, it's a place of positivity. And then it comes from just like practicing thinking about that lift from that place of positivity over and over and over again until it just becomes a matter of doing it and it's automatic when it comes time to do it. So, guys, that is what I got for today. Thank you so much for everyone who answered questions. If you answered a question and did not get, if you everyone who answered questions, everyone who asked questions, I don't know why I keep screwing that up. If you asked a question and it did not get answered, it is more than likely that it has already been covered in a previous AMA or a standalone video. There were a bunch of questions that I linked to previous videos on my Instagram story, so go check out the story if yours did not get answered. I also had a couple dudes just with very wholesome thank you for making content to not questions, and I appreciate the heck of you guys too. And like, really, I'm doing this in a way for me because I do enjoy talking about this stuff. I do enjoy making content, but I'm also doing it for you. And I think back to when I was starting powerlifting, Mark Bell's YouTube channel was one of the biggest tools that I used to get better. And now that Mark Bell has moved on to kind of crazy person land, no offense, Mark. I want to try to fill that gap, and that really is my goal because I want to make this place a better place to lift. So that is why I'm doing this YouTube channel. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. And if you guys want to get more in depth on adapting conjugate to work for you rather than just doing the one thing that one guy says that you have to do, check out the Making Conjugate Work for Raw Powerlifting Lecture Series. Link is below. We got a discount code for you. Type in YouTube at checkout. You will save $150 because I want to give back to the people who are supporting the channel. Peace out. Have a good rest of your day.